They say every story has a beginning, but mine didn't start with joy or laughter. Mine began with a fear so deep, I didn't even know it was fear. It began in the silence of a rural home, tucked away in the heart of a small town in the American Midwest, a silence so heavy it swallowed even the bird song at dawn. My name is Vivian. I'm 74 years old, and it's taken me almost a lifetime to be able to speak these words. I was born in a modest house, built of wood and weathered brick, with a tin roof that sang when it rained. My childhood smelled of cornbread in the oven and freshly washed, clothes drying on the line. But it also carried shadows that moved even when the sun was high. At 6 years old, I learned what it meant to be afraid of someone you were supposed to love, what it meant to go to sleep with your heart pounding, and wake up praying nothing would happen that day. And when it did happen, I also learned what it meant to keep quiet, because in my house, we didn't talk about certain things, because good girls didn't complain, because what happened in the family stayed in the family. And so I swallowed my voice. My grandfather, yes, the same man who carved me wooden dolls, was the one who marked my silence forever. He said it was a secret between us. He said I was special, that no one would believe me anyway. And I believed him. I was a child, a little girl with braids and scraped knees. I didn't understand that love doesn't hurt, that a hug isn't supposed to bring shame, that bedtime shouldn't be a punishment. Time passed, and I grew up pretending I was okay, pretending nothing happened, pretending I didn't remember. But memory doesn't obey silence. It whispers. It cries in corners. It returns in dreams. It hides in smells, in sounds, in words that bring it all rushing back. For decades, I built walls, some made of anger, others of fear, many of guilt. I blamed myself for not screaming, for not running, for not telling anyone. And for a long time, I thought it was too late, that there was no point in speaking any more, that it wouldn't change anything, that no one would listen. But I was wrong. One day, on a morning like any other, I woke up, sat on the edge of my bed, and whispered, I don't want to die with this voice still trapped inside me. That whisper was the first step, and now you're here, listening, reading, maybe crying, maybe seeing yourself in these words. So before I continue, I want to ask you to do something simple, but powerful. Write in the comments, I'm ready to break the silence. That phrase isn't just a comment. It's a commitment. It's a step out of the dark. It's the start of your own healing. Leave a like if this story touches you. Because your like is more than a click, it's a sign that stories like mine matter, that truth matters. And if you're not yet subscribed, I invite you to be part of this circle of truth and healing. Because this isn't just my story. It could be yours. It could be your sister's, your mother's, your daughter's, and maybe, just maybe, these words can help someone else whisper for the first time. I don't want to die in silence. Stay with me. The journey is just beginning, and the most powerful revelation might be waiting near the end. The first time I saw a notebook, it wasn't mine. It belonged to my older cousin, Sophia. She would sit in the shade of the plum tree behind Grandma's house, writing pages and pages of things I didn't understand. Poems, lists, angry phrases, sometimes names, sometimes dates. One day, I asked her, "What do you write so much about?" She replied without looking up, "The things I can't say." That phrase stayed with me for years. The things I can't say. When I turned 13, my aunt gave me a small, spiral notebook with blue lines and a yellow cover. It wasn't anything special, but to me, it felt like a key, a door, a place that would finally listen to what no one else wanted to hear. I started writing in it late at night, under the blanket, with a small flashlight I had hidden in my sock drawer. I didn't know how to write fancy words or deep thoughts, so I wrote what I felt, what I remembered, what hurt. I'm scared. He touched me again. I wanted to scream, but my throat froze. Will anyone ever believe me? That notebook became my confidant. It was where I could cry without making noise, where I could shout in silence. Each page carried a weight, a scream, a piece of my voice that I wasn't ready to let out loud. Sometimes I'd hide it in the barn, inside an old shoebox. Other times, under the loose floorboard behind my bed. I lived in fear that someone would find it, and at the same time, in fear that no one ever would, because even in silence, I hoped someone might read those words and say, "You're not crazy, you're not dirty, you're not alone." But no one read them, not then. I filled that notebook and started another, then another. By the time I was 16, I had 6 full notebooks, each one a chapter of a story I couldn't yet call my own. Writing was the only way I didn't disappear, because when you're abused, especially as a child, a part of you vanishes, the part that laughs loudly, that trusts, that believes in happy endings. My notebooks kept that part alive, hidden, but alive. Years later, during one of my lowest points, I found those old notebooks in a cardboard box at the back of my closet. I hadn't read them in decades. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. Page 1. He said if I told anyone, they'd take me away. He said Grandma would die of sadness. He said God punishes girls who break the family. Reading those words again was like peeling open an old wound. But something was different this time. I wasn't 13 anymore. I wasn't that scared little girl. I was a grown woman, and as I read my own pain, I felt something rise inside me, not shame, not guilt, but rage and dignity. That girl who wrote all that, was brave, not because she fought back, but because she survived, because she wrote, because she kept a part of herself from dying completely. I sat on the floor for hours, surrounded by torn pages and fading ink, rereading the pain I had buried for so long. And I whispered to myself, you didn't deserve any of this, and you never had to carry it alone. From that day forward, I made a promise that one day I would speak out loud what I had only written, that one day my voice would not live in notebooks, but in the air, in other ears, in other hearts. That day didn't come right away, but it came, and when it did, it was like learning to breathe again. So, if you've ever kept a secret that's eating you alive, if you've ever written things no one else knows, if your silence has become too loud, know this: you are not weak. You are not broken. You are carrying too much, and it's time to let it out. Before we continue, I ask you to comment below. I won't carry this alone anymore. Let this be your release. Let this be the first tear that leads to healing. And if this story speaks to your heart, please like the video and subscribe, because what you do now might reach someone who is still hiding their notebook, still waiting for someone to say, I believe you. There are moments in life when silence becomes so heavy that it crushes you. Moments when your own body becomes a prison. When you look at yourself in the mirror and wonder, how long can I carry all of this without breaking? I was 17 the first time I truly wanted to disappear, not to run away, not to start over, to disappear. I had just returned from school. My mother was in the kitchen, washing dishes, as if the world were perfectly normal. My grandfather was asleep in the living room chair, a newspaper on his lap. From the outside, everything looked peaceful. Inside me, it was war. I had received a letter that day, anonymous, no signature, just for words written in shaky handwriting. I know your secret. My hands trembled. My heart pounded. I reread it again and again. Who knew? What did they know? Were they mocking me, threatening me, trying to help? That letter was a trigger. It brought everything back. The night I thought I could tell my teacher and lost my courage. The time I tried to write a letter to a neighbor but tore it up out of fear. The day I almost told my mom, but she was too tired and I was too afraid. I remember the first time he touched me, the second, the 10th, the 100th. I remembered my breath catching in my chest, the silent tears soaking my pillow, the prayer that I repeated night after night. God, Please make me invisible. But I wasn't invisible. I was there, alive, suffering, and now someone knew. I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the cold tile floor. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red, my lips pale, my soul quiet. And in that silence, I asked myself, would it be better if I weren't here? I didn't want to end my life because I hated living. I wanted to end it because I didn't know how to keep living with that pain. I had never spoken to anyone about it, not even in my notebooks, not completely. There were parts too dark to write down, too disgusting, too shameful. I was drowning in guilt that wasn't mine, in a silence that wasn't mine, in fear that had settled in my bones like winter in an empty house. I remember opening the cabinet under the sink, staring at the bottles, reading the labels, feeling the cold plastic in my hands. And then, from the other side of the door, I heard a voice. It was my little sister. She was 7, knocking softly. Sis, are you okay? I didn't answer. Can you braid my hair later? You promised. That broke me. That saved me. Not because of the braid. Not because of the promise. But because I realized I was still needed. That someone still saw me. That even if I felt invisible, I didn't take anything that day. I didn't die. But something inside me shifted. I didn't want to die anymore. I wanted to be free, even if I had no idea how. Later that night, I took out my notebook and wrote a single sentence. Today, I almost didn't make it, but I stayed for her. I wish I could say things got better. Immediately, they didn't, but that moment became a seed, a whisper inside me that said, there has to be more than this pain. And if you're reading this now, if you've ever asked yourself the same question, if you've ever stood in front of that mirror, know that your life matters, even if it feels like it doesn't, even if the pain is unbearable, even if no one knows what you're carrying. Someone needs you. Maybe you don't know who yet, but they exist, and they will thank you someday for staying. Before we move on, I ask you to comment below. I stayed, and I choose to keep going. Let those words be your anchor, your declaration, your beginning. And if you believe this message needs to be heard, leave a like and subscribe, not for numbers, but for lives, for people who need to hear that there's light after darkness. Stay with me. This story is not over, and the next chapter may carry the key to your healing. There are visits that knock on your door and change nothing, and there are others that come like a whisper and rearrange everything inside you. Mine came on a rainy Thursday afternoon when I least expected it, and from someone I never thought would understand me. I was 19 and still living in the same house, same walls, same roof, same silence. My grandfather had grown older, slower, quieter, but his presence still cast long shadows across the rooms. Every creak of the floorboard brought back memories I had tried so hard to bury. I was studying part-time and working at the local grocery store, pretending to be fine, smiling when I had to, nodding when expected. But inside, I was hollow. That day, I was folding laundry in the living room when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I saw her, my cousin Sophia, the one with the notebook, the one who wrote poems under the plum tree, the one who left town at 16 and never came back. Until now, she looked older, stronger. She wore no makeup, carried a small leather bag, and her eyes held something I hadn't seen. In years, peace, I stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say. I was passing through, she said, and I thought of you. We hugged. It was stiff at first. Then something melted. She came inside. We had tea, and we talked about everything and nothing. The weather, the neighbors, how Grandma's plum tree had finally fallen in a storm. But after an hour of surface-level chatter, she put her cup down and looked at me. "Vivian," she said, "I came because I need to ask you something, and you can say no. You don't even have to answer, but I have to try." I nodded, nervous. "Did he hurt you too?" My breath caught. The teacup trembled in my hands. I didn't speak. I couldn't. But my silence said everything. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just reached into her bag and pulled out an old notebook. Hers. I wrote about it for years. She said, "I thought I was the only one." For a moment, the world tilted. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. It had happened, and not just to me. We sat there in silence, not the heavy kind, not the oppressive kind, but the kind that holds space for pain and truth. She told me her story, how she found help, how therapy saved her, how she rebuilt herself piece by piece. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't offer cliches. She just shared, and in that sharing, something lit inside me, a spark. That night, I took out my notebooks. I reread pages I had once been too afraid to revisit, and I wrote again, not in pain, but in clarity, not to survive, but to begin. Healing. Sophia stayed for 3 days. She slept in my room. We whispered like we did when we were kids, but now our whispers were truths, confessions. Pieces of shattered memories finally fitting into place. Before she left, she hugged me and whispered in my ear, "You don't have to live in that silence anymore." That sentence became my lifeline. In the weeks that followed, I gathered the courage to tell my mother. It didn't go well. She cried. She denied. She blamed herself. Then she blamed me. But even that didn't break me, because I had finally said it out loud. And once the truth is spoken, it doesn't go back into the box. I started therapy, secretly at first, then openly. Each session peeled away another layer of shame, of guilt, of fear. And with every tear, I found strength I didn't know I had. I wasn't healed, not yet, but I was no longer in the dark. So if you've ever had someone show up unexpectedly, someone who sees your pain without asking, who speaks your truth before you dare to say it, hold on to them. And if no one has come yet, maybe this video is your Sophia. Maybe I'm her for you. Before we continue, I want to ask you to comment below. The truth may hurt, but silence destroys. Let that be your sentence, your step toward freedom. If this story is awakening something inside you, please like and subscribe, not just for you, but for the next person still waiting for their knock on the door. Stay with me. The fire is just beginning to burn, and healing has a sound. Some voices don't scream. Some don't even speak. They tremble. They whisper. They press themselves against the throat, hoping to be heard before dissolving into silence again. Mine had waited for years, inside me, tied to every bone, every muscle, every scar. It had tried to escape countless times, through my eyes, my notebooks, my silence. But it wasn't until I was 22 that I truly tried to make it heard. By then, I had been in therapy for almost a year. Sophia and I still wrote letters. My little sister was growing fast, and the house, though still holding the same shadows, no longer felt like it owned me. One night, I was invited to speak at a women's group in a nearby town. It wasn't a formal event, just a small gathering at a church hall, with coffee, folding chairs, and women who met once a month to talk about life, faith, and pain. The organizer, a warm woman named Celia, had heard from my therapist that I might have a story worth sharing. She called me and asked gently, "No pressure, dear, but sometimes one voice opens many hearts." I didn't sleep for 3 nights before the event. I rehearsed in front of the mirror, then cried, then tore up my notes. What if they judged me? What if they didn't believe me? What if I froze? But something in me kept whispering, "You're ready." That evening, I wore a simple blue dress, tied my hair back, held my old yellow notebook in my hands. There were 23 women in the room, most older than me, some around my age, all strangers. When Celia introduced me, I felt my legs shake, my throat dry. I looked at the notebook, then at them, and I began. I didn't tell everything, not yet, but I told enough. I told them about my grandfather, about the silence, about the first notebook, about the bathroom floor, about Sophia's visit, No one interrupted. No one looked away. Some cried. Some closed their eyes. Some clutched their own hands so tightly. Their knuckles turned white. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then a woman stood up. She was in her 50s, gray hair, soft voice. She said, "Your story is mine. I've just never told anyone." And then another, and another, and another. That night, 7 women broke their silence, some after decades, some for the very first time. And I learned something that has stayed with me ever since. Sometimes the courage of one voice becomes the bridge for many, but that light didn't last long. The following week, someone in the town told my mother what I had said. She called me furious, broken, confused. "Why would you lie like that?" she screamed. I tried to explain, tried to make her see, but her pain was louder than my truth. She didn't want to believe her father was capable of such things. Didn't want her world turned upside down. Didn't want the shame. She told me I was tearing the family apart, that I was selfish, that I was seeking attention. It crushed me for days. I spiraled. I doubted myself again, questioned my memories, my voice, my worth. But then I received a letter from one of the women at the meeting. She wrote, "You saved my life." I was planning to take sleeping pills that night, but your story gave me a reason to stay. Thank you. And that reminded me that truth isn't always welcomed, but it is always needed. It reminded me that I didn't speak to be accepted. I spoke to be free, to free others. And I made a vow to myself, even if the whole world turns its back, I will never silence my truth again. So if you've ever tried to speak and no one listened, if you've ever been told you're exaggerating, if your voice has been met with rejection, know this: your story matters. Even if it shakes the world, even if it makes others uncomfortable, even if it breaks the silence of generations. Before we move forward, comment below. My voice deserves to be heard. Let it be a declaration, a promise to yourself. And if this story resonates with you, please like the video and subscribe, not just for this story, but for all the untold ones it represents. Because even if only one person listens, sometimes that's enough to change everything. Time passes, but the walls remember, and sometimes the only way to move forward is by walking straight into the place that once silenced you. I was 29 when I returned to the house where everything began, where I lost my innocence, where I learned to fake smiles and hide notebooks, where silence had been my cage. I had moved out 5 years earlier, after therapy, after support groups, after countless letters exchanged with Sophia. I had finally found a small apartment of my own in a neighboring town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. It had light, windows, bookshelves, and peace. I had stopped speaking to my mother, not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't continue bleeding into hands that wouldn't hold me. Still, part of me missed her, ached for her voice, her cooking, the way she used to braid my hair on Sundays before everything turned dark. Then, one day, I got the call. She was sick, very sick, and she wanted to see me. I hesitated for hours, for days. Sophia told me gently, "You don't owe her anything, Vivian. But maybe you owe it to yourself to know you tried." So I packed a small bag, wrote a few sentences in my journal, and took the bus back to the house that had once swallowed my voice. As soon as I stepped off, the air hit me like a memory. The scent of dust, the sound of cicadas, the shape of the hill I used to run down as a girl. The house looked smaller, more tired. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown. But the door was the same. I knocked, and when she opened it, I barely recognized her. My mother had aged, her eyes sunken, her skin thin as paper, but her presence still carried the weight of everything unspoken. She hugged me, briefly, awkwardly, then led me inside. The house hadn't changed much. Same wooden chairs, same photographs on the wall, same creaky floorboards. But I had changed. She made tea. We sat at the table in silence. The same table where I once drew with crayons, where I had prayed to be invisible. After a few sips, she looked at me. "I know I failed you," she whispered. My throat tightened. I didn't want to believe it. About him, about what happened. I was scared and ashamed and angry, and I took it out on you. A tear slid down her cheek. I said nothing because I had waited years for those words, and I needed to let them land. She continued, "After you left, the house became cold. I started reading the Bible again, and I found this verse." She reached into a drawer and handed me a small, worn paper. It read, "The truth will set you free." John 8:30, she said. I thought that meant I had to fix you, but now I know. It meant I had to face myself. We didn't say much more that night, but something in the air had shifted. Not completely healed, but open. I slept in my old room. The wallpaper faded. The same creaky bed, the same drawer, where I once hid pages torn from my notebook. I opened that drawer and found nothing, just air, dust, and silence. But for the first time, it wasn't terrifying. It was peaceful. In the morning, before I left, I sat with my mother again. She held my hand. "Will you forgive me one day?" she asked. I looked at her, and I told her the truth. I'm learning to forgive myself first. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming the future. That day, I walked out of the house with my shoulders lighter, not because the pain had vanished, but because I had chosen to stop carrying what was never mine to hold. And if you're reading this now, if there's a house you're afraid to return to, a person you fear confronting, a truth you've buried deep, know this. Your healing doesn't depend on their apology. It begins the moment you choose your peace over their denial. Before we move on, I invite you to comment below. I choose peace over pain. Let that be your vow, your step forward. And if this story resonates with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel, because every view, every comment, every share could be the door someone needs to walk through to finally reclaim their voice. Some words are too heavy to speak, so they become letters. Letters that sit in drawers, in notebooks, in the depths of our chest. I had written 1,000 versions of it, in my mind, in my journals, in sleepless nights when my chest felt too tight to breathe. But I had never dared to send it, until the day came when I realized I didn't need justice. I needed liberation. That day, I sat at my kitchen table. The sun was setting, and the light hit my hands as if the sky itself was giving me permission to write. I took a blank page, and I began, "Dear Grandfather." The pen trembled, not out of fear, but out of the weight of what I was finally releasing. You don't deserve these words, but I deserve the freedom that comes with writing them. It wasn't a letter to accuse. That had already been done. To the wind, to the notebooks, to my therapist, this letter was for me. I was 6 when you stole my voice. You thought you were clever, that your secrets would stay buried, that I was too small to remember, too scared to speak it, too broken, to resist. And you were right, for a while. But silence doesn't erase wounds. It deepens them. And every time you smiled at me in public, every time you passed the bread at Sunday lunch, I felt my body disappear a little more. Do you remember the closet where you told me to hide? I do. Do you remember the phrase you repeated so many times? It became my inner voice. If you tell anyone, no one will believe you. I believed that for years, but now I don't. The letter was 5 pages long. I wrote about the moments he ruined, the joy he stole, the nightmares, the self-doubt, the shame. I didn't write it to forgive him. I wrote it to free the girl I once was. At the end, I wrote, I don't know if you're alive. I don't care, because whether your body breathes or not, you no longer live inside me. I am not your secret. I am not your shadow. I am not your silence. I am Viviane, and I survived. When I folded the letter, I didn't feel fear. I felt release. I didn't mail it. I burned it in a small metal bowl on my balcony, 1 page at a time. watching the words turn to ash, watching the fire consume what once consumed me. That night, I slept like I hadn't in years. No dreams, no fists clenched, just silence. But this time, a silence that healed and hears. The truth, sometimes closure doesn't come from them. It comes from the letter they'll never read. From the words you finally give yourself permission to say. So if you're holding onto something, a pain, a memory, a scream that never made it out, write it all, even if no one sees it, especially if no one sees it. Because healing doesn't always look like revenge or confrontation. Sometimes it looks like a quiet moment, a pen in your hand, and the courage to let go. Before we continue, I want to ask you to comment below. My silence no longer protects my pain. Let that be your declaration, your liberation. And if this story is guiding you in some way, like the video and subscribe, not for me, but for the girl or boy still waiting for someone to say, you're allowed to speak. There are moments in life when you look in the mirror and no longer see a reflection. You see a story, a war, a survivor. I was 37 the day it happened. I had just returned from a retreat for women who had experienced trauma. It was held in the mountains, far from the noise of the city, surrounded by pine trees and fireflies. There, I had spoken more freely than ever before. I had cried in front of strangers, and I had listened to stories so painful they made mine feel less lonely. When I came back home, I felt lighter, but I was also exhausted, emotionally raw, wide open. That night, after showering, I wiped the fog from the bathroom mirror, and for the first time in my life, I saw her, the woman I had become, not the child, not the victim, not the broken girl hiding notebooks under her bed, but a woman with strong shoulders, lines around her eyes, a gaze that had known darkness and chosen light anyway. She was me, and yet, somehow, she felt new. I stood there for a long time, just looking, letting the silence say everything that words couldn't. And I remembered every version of myself. I had survived. The little girl with trembling hands, the teenager who slept with the lights on, the young adult who pretended everything was fine, the woman who screamed into pillows because she couldn't scream out loud. They were all there in my reflection, and instead of hating them, I honored them because each of them had carried me here. I whispered, thank you, to every scar, to every night I thought would never end, to every no I had finally learned to say. And I made a decision. I would no longer just survive. I would live. That meant taking risks, allowing love, setting boundaries, and no longer apologizing for who I had become. That year, I started volunteering at shelters, I shared my story at schools. I trained in trauma-informed counseling. I created a space small but sacred where women could come and write, cry, talk, or just breathe. I called it Lavas, the voice, because that was what I had once lost, and what I had vowed to never let anyone take again. And something strange happened. The more I helped others find their voice, the clearer mine became. One day, during a group session, a young woman asked me, "How do you know when you've healed?" I paused, smiled, and said, "When you can look in the mirror and no longer want to break it. Healing isn't linear. It's messy, chaotic, unpredictable. Some days I still cried. Sometimes memories returned like storms, but I no longer feared them because I had built shelter within myself. And I want you to know something. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't always tell the whole truth either. Sometimes you have to look beyond what you see, beyond the tired eyes, beyond the weary skin, beyond the pain, and remember, you are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to become afterward. So tonight, when you face your reflection, I want you to look deeper and say, I see me, and I honor everything I've survived to be standing here. If you've ever looked in the mirror and questioned your worth, comment below. I am more than my reflection. Let's flood this space with reminders for those still searching, still healing, still learning to see themselves not as broken, but as whole. And if this message touched your heart, like the video and subscribe, because maybe the next story will be yours. The past doesn't disappear, it transforms, and sometimes it becomes a story that saves someone else. Her name is Clara. She has my eyes and the same stubbornness I had when I was 7. The first time she asked about my childhood, I hesitated. We were in the kitchen. She was sitting on the counter, swinging her legs, peeling apples. "Grandma," she said, "what were you like when you were little?" I smiled, but I felt the earthquake begin inside my chest. How do you tell a child you once were one? 2, but not like her. I sat down across from her, held an apple in my hand, and peeled it slowly. I was quiet, I said, but not because I didn't want to speak. Because no one listened. She tilted her head. "Didn't you have toys?" "Yes," I said, "but they were afraid, too." She laughed, then looked at me a little more seriously. "Did someone hurt you?" Silence. She was only 10, but somehow she knew. I reached for her hand, and I said something I had waited my entire life to say. "Yes, Clara, someone did. But I'm safe now, and you are, too." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat like that for a long time. Later that week, I took her to the garden, the same one I had planted after therapy, the one where every flower had a name. a meaning. We picked sunflowers, and I told her about strength, about light, about forgiveness that doesn't excuse, but liberates. I didn't tell her everything, not yet, but I told her the truth in pieces her heart could carry, and I made a promise to myself that the legacy I leave won't be silence. It will be voice. It will be truth. It will be the kind of love that protects instead of hides. That Christmas, I gave her her first journal. On the first page, I wrote, "Your voice is sacred. Use it to heal, never to hide." She hugged me so tightly. I felt something shift inside me again, like one more chain had fallen off. You see, we think healing is a destination, but sometimes it's just a table with apples, a garden with sunlight, a child's question answered. With courage, I told Clara that no matter what happens in life, she is never alone. That even in the darkest night, there's a candle inside her that no one can extinguish. She asked me, "Even if someone tries?" I answered, "Especially then." Because that's what I wish someone had told me. That's what I want you to know now. If you have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, be the one who says what was never said to you. Be the protector you didn't have. Be the voice you needed when you were a child. And if you've never heard it from anyone, hear it from me. You deserved safety. You deserved protection. You deserved love that didn't hurt. And now you deserve to rest. Before we continue, I want to invite you to comment below. I will break the cycle with love and truth. This space we're building together is more than a story. It's a testimony, a chain-breaking song. If this story touched you, like the video and subscribe, because the more we speak, the less silence wins. Sometimes the most powerful sound is the silence that comes after the scream. I'm no longer the same woman who wrote her first words in a hidden notebook. I'm no longer the girl who trembled at footsteps or flinched at certain voices. That echo, the one that used to chase me at night, has finally faded. And what remains is peace. Not the peace you find in a calm morning or a walk by the sea, but the kind that is born inside a war survivor, the kind that is earned after confronting shadows, naming them, and deciding not to fear them anymore. I look back now and realize that everything, the pain, the silence, the unanswered questions, became a map, a path carved in fire, that led me home, not as a place with walls, but as a space within myself, where I no longer need to hide. Today, when I light a candle in my house, I don't do it to keep the dark away. I do it to remind myself that light lives in me. And that's what I want to leave with you. If you made it this far, you are not your trauma. You are not what they did to you. You are not the silence they forced on your throat. You are the voice that rose from the ashes. You are the answer to every prayer you thought had been ignored. You are the continuation of a story that pain tried to end, but didn't. And if you've walked with me through all 10 blocks of this story, I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Because staying until the end is not easy. It means you carry your own pain, your own memories, and still chose to honor someone else's truth. That makes you special. That makes you part of a rare group of souls, the seekers, the healers, the ones who turn wounds into wings. Now I ask you, with all the honesty and hope I can give, please comment below. I arrived until the end because I'm ready to live in truth. These words are not just a comment. They're a symbol, a torch, a declaration to the world that silence no longer owns you. And I want to see your name among the ones who made it, because I read every comment, and in each one I see a spark, a person, a survivor. Now let me ask you something. What if this story you just heard had reached you 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier? What would have changed? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But now, you have the power to be that change in someone else's life. Share this video, not for me, but for the version of you that once felt alone. Because there's a girl out there right now, writing in a secret notebook, thinking no one will ever believe her. And this story might be the voice she needs to hear. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it. Not because it's a trend, but because every time you do, you say, this message matters. This truth must reach further. Be proud if you already are a subscriber. You are part of a movement of truth and light. And if you're not, ask yourself, what is holding me back from joining something that heals? Don't let doubt delay your transformation. There are more stories waiting for you on this channel. Each one is a piece of a puzzle. Each one is a hand reaching out to your heart. Stay with us. Walk with us. Speak with us. And now, as the music begins to play, don't rush. Don't close the page. Close your eyes. Let everything you heard today settle in your spirit. Inhale deeply. Exhale without fear. Say a prayer. Or just thank your own heart for still beating despite everything. Let this final moment seal something inside you. And remember, don't pause yet. Wait until the very end. Something powerful might be taking root in you now.